Right, so welcome everybody. I'm going to be doing a stream tonight on a particular combo that I've been doing to some huge success, and that is using one of our favourite models, the cheeky boy, the man of tricks, Darkstrider, a Pathfinder unit, and a Devilfish. And the reason this is an important trick to get right and practice is because it wins you one of the most important things in a game, and that's board control, and it does it before the game actually begins. And it can also block out enemy infiltrating units. So, what have we got in the meta right now? Well, Necrons have the Kinetic Court, and they've got an enhancement that they can just basically go, here's a unit of 6 Wraiths, 9 inches away from your deployment line, and then if they go first, they can rush into you. You've got various Marine builds, like the Vanguard builds, that will have, same thing, a big unit of aggressors. And outside of that, you've got things like just general infiltrating units that want to try and get into you as soon as they can and actually tag up your important pieces. So deployment is one of the most important things for Tau players to get right. Get it wrong and you can lose the game before it begins. Get it right and you're in a good position to control the tempo. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a typical UKTC board, and the mission is obviously, I think it's a sweeping engagement deployment. Now usually you'll find that deployment can be quite tight on some of these maps, and hiding Devilfishes can be quite tricky, but if you do hide them, you're losing a lot of movement. So for example here, you'd have to move around the terrain, and you're losing around about 7 inches straight off the get-go. Same with here, and then pivoting obviously takes off your movement as well. So for example, what I'll do in a deployment stage is I will have my units going into reserve and stuff. Let me just load up one other unit because it's important to show you. Let me load up a unit of breaches. Excuse me. Saved objects. Tau. Should organise my stuff more. Let's put a breach unit. I'm not bothered which one it is. Okay. So usually what we'd do is we'd put a unit of breaches in the Devilfish, which makes perfect sense. But in this type of scenario, most of my lists will have 2 breach efficient as minimum. I'll just put a unit of breaches on foot, tucked into some terrain here. I will put Darkstrider in the Devilfish solo. And this is important. I'll place my Devilfish. This is not in any particular order, but I'd have my Devilfish something like that. Presume that I win the roll-off for attacker or defender. I will choose defender. What I will then do is I'd start to do some pre-measuring. So consider that my Pathfinder unit is the first unit that I'm deploying because we're trying to win the infiltration war. I will start off by measuring 7 inches to where the Devilfish can go. So there. So if I just draw a line here, give or take, it's TTS, 7 inches gets me to about here. Now I will place my Pathfinders in such a way where their scout move will end within effectively 17 inches from where it starts. 7 inches. As long as my back of my Pathfinder bases are 10 inches away from where the Devilfish will end, I can do something. So I will place my Pathfinder unit like so. Something like that. And then I will check that every model, so if I move the Devilfish now, in the scouting move, my first scout move goes, okay, Devilfish, scout move 7, because Darkstrider has a scout keyword and he is the only thing embarked in the Devilfish. and that allows the devilfish to scout itself. Then I can scout move my pathfinders 7 inches back, and obviously remember it's TTS, so assume that I've got it right on here, maybe a little bit back. And as long as the pathfinders end within 3 inches, not wholly within 3 inches of my devilfish, they can then embark. And the reason you can do this is because a scout move is a normal move. Therefore, you can embark into a devilfish. So what this trick basically does is essentially block off where your enemy can infiltrate. So my pathfinder, let me just grab another pathfinder, was like here, and the other pathfinder was there, from one end to the other. So my enemy can infiltrate what? In the open there, here, and I can block off this entire centerpiece where they would be tempted to potentially infiltrate something dangerous that can then move and advance or move and charge into my important pieces. So pathfinders blocked infiltrators, and then because Darkstrider's in a devilfish, the devilfishes then scout move forward to then do with the operation called pick up the boys. I've found that this trick has so many applications. Not only does it stop the enemy infiltrators, but it also keeps the unit safe. And the other application is that it's extra movement. Now if we consider that we're also going first, well, guess what I can do? I can just get the pathfinders out again. I've gained extra movement for a start because I can get out within 3. Then my pathfinders can move 7. And if I want to do an action somewhere, like, I don't know, cleanse on here or do a deployed teleport almost, I can still advance them because I take the pathfinders with a gun drone, giving them the assault keyword. So therefore my pathfinders are buggered off. Let's just assume that I'm going to do a cleanse over here. They've buggered off, out of the devilfish anymore. Obviously hidden, I'm not going to reveal them. But I'm not going to spend an hour on TTS. Then my breachers can move, advance, be within 3, get into the devilfish. So they're in the devilfish, and my devilfish has just gained an extra 7-inch move because of its scout. And depending on obviously what terrain you're on, you don't have to be as defensive as this. Sometimes I've deployed it so that it's like here, like that. Sometimes I've actually just played, depending on my matchup, placed it on the line, scout moved it forward, got into it, and then I could even move the devilfish around, get really close. I could even, for example, get the pathfinders out of the devilfish, go 3, move 7, and consider doing charges against stuff that's not really going to hit me back hard, but I can clog up the enemy. And then, not only that, if they get out there, the breachers could advance and get into the devilfish. So it's basically get a unit out, get a unit in, and then the devilfish can go off and do things. It can move 12, it could then go and do some charging, or you could present the fact that, well, I'll tell you what, you've effectively got a breacher fish in your face turn 1. Sorry, in your face, not out of the devilfish, but they're ready for next turn. So you can really set the tempo with this move. Well, that was a quick explanation, but does anyone have any questions? Put in the chat, and I'll come to you and ask you. Go on, Zorro.
Okay, so I'm aware of the trick since a while, personally, because I'm in the Chazelle. However, I had a question. So you mentioned that nearly all the time you go in the devilfish. even if you go first. Is there any matchup where you just scout move the Pathfinder up, like even not going to the devilfish anyway?
Yes, so certain matchups can depend on if, for example, it's an interesting question because actually I have a unit of Farstalkers in my list. So in a matchup versus World Eaters, you might be tempted just to kind of move the Pathfinders up and keep them there just to stop their scouting whole army. So that's a matchup you might want to consider using them like that just to stop them. But I like to keep my Pathfinders active, so I would maybe sacrifice Farstalkers. But I suppose I'd always get into the Devilfish because what you can do is, depending on your reach, you can get back into the Devilfish and then gain that extra 3 inches to then move out further, so you're moving 10. Now I know you wouldn't always deploy the Pathfinders 9 inches away from the enemy line, so it all depends on matchups, and I know your question was about which matchups you would not get back into a Devilfish. But against Marines at the LVO, I scout moved my 7-inch Devilfish aggressively to effectively out in the open, got my Pathfinders in, and then I got them out again and charged because I gained an additional 3 inches from getting the Devilfish.
The reach is still considerable, even going back into the devilfish into the scout moving phase.
Yes, and then also it can help you with reaching certain areas of the board if you got, for example, a secondary that dictates you to go in a different direction. But the main thing is that for me, Tau's all about a trading resource game, so not losing your assets just for the sake of going, oh, well, I want to block off their infiltrators, but I've lost an asset before the game's actually really started getting going. So that trick that I've shown you allows you to not only tick off objective number 1, which is to stop their infiltrators, it also then allows you tactical flexibility to where you reapply them. And then thirdly, your Breacher Fish can then just move in advance and get into the Devilfish after the Pathfinders have got out on turn 1. So your Breachers are still in a Devilfish, because that's what you really want in the Devilfish. You want your Breachers to be able to do their trick to play around with primary. John, I know you were typing. Did you have a question?
Yeah, it was a little unrelated to the current topic, I guess. But just first of all, really, really great tactics, and I had never seen this before, so this is really cool. I was kind of curious of how you leverage Darkstrider by himself with his deep strike bubble to maybe protect the crisis suits. Like, I've tried to make it work myself, but I've never seen anyone like actually demonstrate it. So I know it's a little bit off topic, but I was
Well,
just really curious.
it's kind of on topic because I have put
Yeah.
Darkstrider combo in the title. So let's talk about our wee sneaky boys, shall we? So
Cool, thank you.
I never, ever, ever join him in Pathfinders. And I know that seems really weird because he's a Pathfinder. He has the +1 to wound for the Pathfinders, but really ask yourself an honest question. Shooting Pathfinders, if you're really relying on their shooting to do something, something's gone wrong somewhere. So for me, Darkstrider is an important tech piece that as soon as you have it in your list, certain armies, looking at you demons and Grey Knight players, will look at them and go, oh, for God's sake, it's going to cause them a headache. So he's like a very important chess piece that you can apply, and you've already mentioned one of the units, the crisis suits, to protect them. So if you consider where these Pathfinders are here in this piece of terrain, if you imagine these are crisis suits, right? You're hiding them, you don't want them to get shot, hence why you're hiding them. And then secondly, you don't want them getting charged. So a clever opponent, let's just use these red breachers as a demonstration, would wait for you to stage and hide, and then possibly just go, alright, well, you're not coming out to play because I've given you nothing to shoot, I'm going to rapid ingress. And then suddenly you've got a unit that's rapid ingressed here, you've not set up firing angles, and then they're going to charge you. But if you just had Darkstrider right here, you're pushing them back all the way to there. So rather than 9 inches away, they're suddenly here, and it's going to make it a little bit more difficult. So Darkstrider should always be used tentatively to protect your important assets from incoming deep strikes and or rapid ingress. So that's one way I use him, to protect staging points with my crisis suits. The second thing is, when you've got big areas like this, where somebody could deep strike in here, and you can then use him just to kind of go, well, rather than stretching a unit that's potentially revealing my unit to be shot, like if you were screening out here, for example, people can shoot down here, Darkstrider can just fit comfortably there, obscured, and yeah, stops Inceptors as well. And it also stops people from stealing your objectives. We're seeing a lot of this 3-inch deep strike coming at you, you know, Inceptors being one. So if you had a unit, let's say it wasn't Darkstrider, but you only had, let's say, I don't know, a low amount of OC on an objective here, they drop some plasma interceptors here, 3 inches away, and then shoot you off, and they've taken your primary. So Darkstrider is able to kind of go, stay away from this objective, you're not taking it from me. Demons have a 3-inch deep strike ability, Necrons have a 3-inch deep striking ability, Marines, so he can just basically flat up say no to that. So, following the trend of some LVO memes, no monolith in your backfield for Tau, it ain't gonna happen. So, Darkstrider, let's talk about keeping him alive. There is indirect in the game. Yes, I hear this all the time, but don't people just indirect Darkstrider off the board? A clever opponent, when I reveal Darkstrider, definitely does. So I always assume that my opponent is going to be savvy, and if I reveal him early, they will just sacrifice an indirect piece to kill him, because he's not exactly difficult to kill. 3 wounds at T3 at a 4-up save ain't going to survive any indirect. So, the first stages of the game, especially his turns 1 and 2, depending on if you go first or second, I will not reveal him. I will keep him in the Devilfish and just focus on screening like a normal person that doesn't have any access to 12-inch deep strikes. Sorry, 12-inch denials. And then let's say if I go first, I tighten up my screens on turn 1, then I will send him out on turn 2, so that I'm saying to my opponent, okay, you can indirect him if you want, and then if they do, cool, then I've delayed their deep striking abilities by a turn. Then it goes to turn 3, great, I'm in Kion, if you want a deep strike in front of me, I'll overwatch you. Or, if I'm able to keep him alive, and then turn 3, I basically just said to him, no, you can't do your tricks. So Darkstrider is a very important piece. I consider him, if I was playing chess, I'd consider him as my queen. So, he is very tactical, he is very important to just take away people's toolboxes, and then I suppose the third thing is, he's super quick, because he's 7-inch movement, gets out of a Devilfish 3, so that's already 10, and then he's got an assault weapon, so he can advance and do action. So I find that most of the time, he can just go and do me actions. He can screen, sit on objective, do actions, and block out my enemy's deep strikes. So that's already 3 things, plus what he's done at the beginning of the game, for a 60-point model? Hell yeah. And he's got tiny drones and he looks cool. So Darkstrider for me is an important piece that you should always keep as an ace in your hole, ready just to mess with the opponent's deep striking plans. Cool, I'm glad that's helped you out, John. But if you are using Darkstrider, just don't throw him away. keep him in your pocket, ready to just dictate where your opponents can go. And I find he's very good at helping your crisis suit stay safe, but he's also very good at keeping your objectives safe, and he can give you that flexibility to allow a devilfish then to scout, which can give you some early board presence. Any other questions from anybody? So I've seen one in the chat. Question: what role would a solo Darkstrider fulfill if the opponent has no deep strikes or has already used them? Actions, marker light, scoring, the obvious ones. Are there any tricks to him outside of board control? Well, I think you've kind of answered it. If there aren't any, obvious deep strikes, already used them, actions, marker light, I find that actually, because he's so small and his infantry, he can actually get to places where maybe your Tetras might struggle to, because he just can go through terrain and he's like quick and nimble. What I actually do like doing, and I've done this in test games against students, is that I've used him to charge. Because what usually happens when you push up on a flank or something, the enemy will always be able to rapid ingress you and to retaliate to a push that you're doing. Now, imagine charging Darkstrider into something like a small tank or something that's not going to beat him up. And then you've moved him into position, and then if they want to rapid ingress, they have to stay 12 inches away from him. And then you've also charged something that if they do have any other deep strikes as well, they have to be 12 inches away. So I've done it in games where I've had Darkstrider, grab the model, somewhere like here, charging, like from behind the wall or something like that. And then the enemy's like, oh great, I can't come in anywhere like here. And he's just blocked off that entire area, which then gives whatever's following up so much breathing room. So people don't expect Tau to charge in the first place, but if you're charging with something that also has a 12-inch deny bubble, that just controls half of their deployment zone. And yes, he's going to die. He's not going to survive, but he's done his job. And I don't like losing special characters in games, it's a feel bad, but if he's doing all that for me, then hell, it's a 60-point model that can just absolutely ruin their plans. And he can absolutely score you a shitload of points. In one game that I had in a tournament, he scored me 26 points out of the 100. Because I happened just to keep him alive. He did me loads of secondaries like deploy teleport homers in my enemy's deployment zone. Then he got me capturing the outpost. He just did loads because they ignored him and was going after the crisis suits or the other important things. And I was just running amok. And it's a 60-point model, so from a trading perspective, everything that he offers you always punches above his points value. And yes, you're right, Commander Blindside, he can fitting a Delphish with a complete other unit. Because a Delphish can take 12 models, so 10 Breachers, Darkstrider, 10 Pathfinders, Darkstrider. And you don't want to attach him to a unit, because if you attach him to the Pathfinder unit, that is one unit. I'd much rather have 2 units for flexibility. And most of the time I'm hiding my infantry in Devilfishes until I need to either screen or go and deny primary or do some tricks like the charging that I've mentioned and shown you. So having him solo allows me just to kind of, I don't have to stretch a unit to go and do a cleanse, I can just do it with this one model. Or I don't want to have my entire unit of Pathfinders do deploy teleport homers. I'd like to spot and shoot, because I know you can do actions and spot, or spot and then do actions, should I say. But it allows a bigger unit to do more shooting. So it's just another piece for you to achieve secondary points. Yeah, he's a hero in the game last night versus Demons. Kept them from deep striking and scoring secondaries in the middle. Absolutely. Because Demons, with that rule of if they control at least half of the objectives or more, they can just then deep strike within the shadow of the warp. And he just goes, well, I don't care. Oh, you've got Be'lakor that has the shadow of the warp always around him within 6. It's a shame if this little sneaky boy was in front of you going, no. Yeah, it honestly can just shut down some opponents' lists. Any other questions? Mark, I can see you typing. Oh, against GSC. yeah, GSC players just don't like him. Because GSC want to be in your face on your objectives. They want to be taking them off you. They want to be coming real close, and you just go, no, no thank you, go away, you filthy GSC. Any other questions? Does everyone understand it and how it works? So the key thing to do is practice.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, practice the positioning, because if you get it wrong and you're 10.1, expect the salty player that you're doing it to call you out and say nope. You've got to make sure that the back end of every Pathfinder base is within 10 of where the Devilfish will end up. Otherwise, you're not within 3 to embark. So just practice it. Have a look at the layouts that you're playing with, whether it's player placed, whether it's WTC, whether it's UKTC, and then just practice makes perfect. And Tau is literally about deployment, positioning, and resource management. And as long as you get those things right, you can actually play the game of 40k. If you get it wrong, you're probably going to get steamrolled or get frustrated because there's something that you're missing. And that something is, one, sorry, I'm just reading it. Can you demonstrate the scout moves if you go second? Same thing, really, John. I mean, if I'm going second, I don't want my Pathfinders to die. Let me just go to TTS again. So, okay. I think these Devilfish are a little bit too big on TTS, but we'll show it here. So let's just put that one there, roughly. I'll grab my Pathfinders. As in, are you talking about if I go second for infiltrators, or second is in the game turn?
Well, I would say it would be nice to hear your thoughts on both.
Okay.
I was also kind of thinking of, obviously if the Devilfish is moving up, you're scouting up 9, but let's say the opponent, or let's say you're scouting first and bringing them back. Wouldn't that allow some extra space for, like, what I run into in my meta all the time is scout squads, so like for them to get extra movement?
Yeah.
Would you just, are there cases where you just say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to give you any scouts out of your deployment zone. I'm going to stick these Pathfinders here. So anyhow, would love to get your thoughts.
So I've had it done in the past where, the scouts, look, infiltrators plus scout is really powerful. So if you don't win the roll-off, they've not just got one scouting unit, have they? They have many. So let's just assume we'll use 5 breachers as normal Marine scouts. Okay. So one thing I teach in terms of the patron side of things is looking at which objectives you want to fortify, the ones that you're wanting to hold in no man's land. So, for example, which ones would we be looking to fortify on this objective? Left, middle, or right? And if we are in the green, deployment here. Which ones?
Left and middle.
Left. It would always be the left. Middle is death trap. Right is the enemy's one that they're trying to fortify.
Yeah.
So, let's say the Marine player, I went against a Black Templars player who tried to overload this entire flank with his scout move. So he went here with his scouts, and he basically almost did the same thing that I was trying to do, like something like that, okay? So it's like 9 inches away from my deployment line, so it was like here, all the way in a line, 9 inches away, and then just kind of wanted to stop me from infiltrating behind here. So I was like, okay, cool. That's your first scout, the first infiltrator. I'm going to do the opposite. And I basically did it this way. And what I did is I basically measured out where he's going to stop my devilfish going to there. So I still had my devilfish here. And then I just basically had my pathfinders do the same on this side. So they've won their first placement here, so you just retaliate and do the other side. And then if they want to scout move forward, then fine. You just set up screens to stop them from charging things like crisis suits. You just go, okay, if you're going to scout move forwards, you're going to die after you've done your thing, or they're going to scout move behind this wall, which is not a problem, because you can always get there. So if one person takes one flank with their first infiltrating, you take the other. If they go to the middle, then you go to the left or the right. So you just got to be cognitive of where the devilfish can go. Because if he'd have placed them like dead center, let's just say now that I'm going to put this video on YouTube, people are going to then go, oh right, I'm going to play around this. What they're going to do is that they're going to place scout units right in the middle and try and stop you from doing this. So you'd just have it on a flank somewhere. Because they can't stop it all. The only unit that can effectively cover more than 2/3 of the trick is a unit of 12 models. What unit of 12 what army has an access to a unit that can infiltrate with 12 models? Give you a hint. I play it.
Farstalkers.
Yes. Farstalkers have a 12 model unit. 2 hounds, 10 Farstalkers. So this is a unit of 10. You basically can... That's roughly a legal placement without getting the measuring tool of every single model. And then if you added 2 more models to it, you basically extend... Look at that. It's a unit 12. It's pretty much screened out 2/3 of the center line. So yeah, I think you just got to be, with the original question about if they've going to win the deployment defender role and they scout to one side, you just prioritize the other. And you make sure that your devilfish can still get within 7 of the pathfinders. In terms of if I went second in terms of a game, all depends on what I'm going against. Obviously, I don't want my pathfinders being shot or charged. So, if, for example, I wanted just to keep them safe from shooting, I still hop into the devilfish. If I'm not afraid of shooting, because they don't have any, but they're going to charge me, then you've got a couple of options. You can scout move within 3 of the devilfish, and then lure them in, and then just spend a CP and get back into the devilfish. Or you can just hop back into the devilfish, let them charge the devilfish, and then it blows up, but then your pathfinders still get out and they're safe. So worst case scenario, you lose devilfish. You won't have the CP unless you've got an ethereal in your list, which I don't generally run. and if that ethereal gets you an extra CP on a 4+, you've got 2 CP to play with, so you could keep them outside of the Devilfish, spend a CP for photon grenades to make them -2 to charge, and they have to take a battle shock test, and then spend the second CP to hop back into a Devilfish. You could potentially have Shadow Sun nearby, because she's got infiltrate, so that you have an option to get a CP back on a 5+ if you're not taking an ethereal, but that's obviously a bit riskier. It's like a 1/3 chance of actually getting 33% chance of getting a CP back, whereas your ethereal is at least a 50-50. And yeah, these are the little combos you can do, but the one thing I quite like as well, and this is something I did to an opponent at LVO, just as my last reveal of today. If you string out your Pathfinders in such a way where, let's just demonstrate this way. So I basically cleansed with my Pathfinders for 2 objectives, and I had them something like one guy here, there, like that, because it's really early doors, so he hadn't set up lots of stuff to counteract. And I placed my Devilfish something like here, and I had every model within 3. Cleanse both of these objectives, and yes, you can cleanse 2 objectives with 1 unit, because you just have to control the objectives, and you can cleanse 2 with 1 unit. Read the card. What I said to my opponent was like, okay, cool. So, do you want to shoot them? Probably didn't want to shoot them, because what he wanted to do is use this juicy unit to get his charging units closer to my army. So he was going to charge them, and I was like, that's absolutely fine. And because I've tactfully kept all of my models within 3 inches of the Devilfish's hull, and any part of the Devilfish is its hull, I then basically went, okay, you're charging me. And because I didn't spend a CP in my first turn, I did photon grenades, -2 to charge, take a battle shock test, and if they failed it, he didn't, but if you do fail it, they can't CP reroll. And then I just hopped back into my Devilfish. And Darkstrider's still in the Devilfish as well, so he made the charge, hit the Devilfish, wasn't really set up to kill the Devilfish, because he was setting up to kill the infantry, and then my Pathfinders were in the Devilfish still, and I've not lost my Pathfinders, not lost the Devilfish, and then he's out in the open for my rest of my army to get busy blasting. So you can stretch the Pathfinders from one objective to another and still be wholly within 3 of the Devilfish to hop back in on both ends. So honestly, the way to use these units is endless. And it is very cheeky. Oh, thanks, John. It is quite incredible, if I must say so myself. I love these little moments where I spot utility and I apply them in game, and it catches people off guard. And the reason I've got a keen eye for this is because I've been playing Tau for way too long. And I was playing Tau in the edition when we were absolutely dog tier. And I was looking at what abilities my units had, and let's be fair, back in, I think it was like lower 8th, there was none. I was looking at how I can use units to the full effectiveness whilst everyone else in the game had superior toys. So it's never quite left me. Just look at the basics, understand the basic fundamentals of the rules, and then apply them in game. And it's surprising that actually the simplest of things, like reading the scout rule, what is it, it's a normal move, allows you to embark in a Devilfish or a transport, people were like, I never even thought of that. And it's because we as 40k players tend to skim read stuff, or we just listen to like old rules and we think, oh yeah, it's the same as like ninth, but it's not, it's changed. So there's something to be said about just going back, reading the rules, reading the interactions, and then using basic rules against your opponent. And I kid you not, everybody that I've played against looked at their codex thinking, well, can I have access to that? I want access to embark into a vehicle. And other armies can do it. They just got to know it's there. Any other questions? You're welcome, Mark. I'll just wait while people are typing. No worries, Ben. Thank you. Okay, so assuming you and the opponent have multiple scout move units, let's say you also have 2 Kroot carnivores, and the enemy has 2 units that can scout. Is it fair to assume that you would scout with the Pathfinders last to not have your opponent move in where you just left? Yeah, I would. But it also depends on what's scouting. And most things that have scout and infiltrate aren't really going to be doing massive damage. So yeah, I would scout move the Pathfinders last, because you've got... I usually have 1 unit of Kroot carnivores in my list. So I'll have... The Farstalkers sadly don't have scout. And yes, that's a good point, Will. You don't. You don't alternate scout moves. You alternate infiltrators, but not scout. You do the person who's going first does all their scout moves. Yeah, yeah. So basically, scout moves are just done all at once. So literal example of what Kyle said, yeah. So scout moves are different from infiltrate. So infiltrate you do alternate because it's deployment. Scout moves you do all in one go. And that's the prime example of like 9th versus 10th. Things have changed. Any other questions? So, if there's no other questions, this is the part where I basically do a plug. LVO is over. I've achieved something that I've set out to achieve, which is the top Tau player, and I'm really proud and thank you so much for all the support from you all. I've had plenty of people come over to me at LVO and introduce themselves, plenty of people responding very kindly on the Facebook posts and in the Discord. And LVO was a phenomenal achievement. I didn't actually set out to get as far as I did, but I made the final cut. And I think it just made me really proud because I was representing the Puretide Program and obviously wanted to show that Tau are in a really good place and can be piloted well, and the list can work. So obviously you all have access to my list that's on BCP. I will just put it in the Chasserie list channel because it's available online for all to see anyway. It's a balanced list, it works perfectly. It's got all the tricks and tools that you need. I've demonstrated one of the main tools that I've used in all my games tonight for you to really kind of give you that bit of fun to use with Darkstrider, Pathfinder and Elfish. We've obviously got the balance date slate coming out. That's due next week. We've heard rumours of Tuesday, but it's going to be next week. Tau, we don't know. I personally feel that we need some sort of adjustment, and I don't mean in the positive. I think that a few things are way too cheap. I think some things need to go down. But as soon as it comes out, I'll be doing some sort of review on it. And then obviously, in the next coming months, we're going to have a brand new codex, and I think that's really exciting. It's going to give us lots of options and tools to play with. I haven't seen it. I don't have any access to early codexes like some of the big YouTubers, so I'll be waiting in line just like the rest of you. But I'm really excited to get a bit of a fresh look on the game. New tools, the recruit models look amazing. And yeah, if you are on the fence about signing up to my patrons, then send me a message. What I like to do... Oh God, Ben, no. Oh Ben, that is a really old photo of me. But that's me and Ben playing Tal. But if you are really interested in signing up, then just send me a message, because I like to do welcome calls with my audience. I like to talk through the different options and answer any questions you have. But I'll put the link in the chat here. I have 3 tiers for all budgets and offering 3 different things. So come and join me, and if you want to learn more about the game and more about these tricks that I do and these things that I teach, then I'm very much interested in helping you progress as a player, not just as a Tau player. And I look at things like, your average VPs that you're scoring, your differentials, and the things that are maybe blocking you from achieving what you're trying to achieve, whether that be the best Tau in your local area or in a certain state or country, or just genuinely wanting to improve your consistencies. And I do love working with the micro detail, and I am very much detail focused, but I will work with what you've got. You don't necessarily just need to be handed a net list and assume that you're just going to do well with it. I've had clients where they just want to run a certain unit, and that's absolutely fine. We all collect Tau for a reason, and we all like the models that we like. So it's not just about a competitive meta list. So, like I said, if you're interested, send me a message, and the link's down below, and then I'm more than happy to have a chat with you. So yeah, thanks for your time, guys, and hopefully this trick has helped you out, and you're going to go forward and use it and annoy loads of people. See you later, guys.
Oh, well, I got in at the wrong time.
Oh, you're always late, Johnny.